Okay, let's take a look at one of Canada's oldest and most productive industries, the forest industry. Trees. Yeah, I know these aren't real trees. This resource can be found all across Canada. It ranges all the way from BC, British Columbia, over to Newfoundland, and it makes up about 42% of our total land mass. So almost half of all of the land in Canada is covered with some sort of forest. So there's 12 different types of forests that can be located across Canada. You don't necessarily need to know all of those, but you do need to know the difference between softwood and hardwood trees. So they can also be considered evergreen or broadleaf or coniferous or deciduous. So you might have heard these terms used interchangeably, but essentially they mean the same thing. So this map is just showing you those different types of wood. So softwood is in the dark green. You can see that it's located all across Canada and makes up the largest portion of our forests. Um, Hardwood is the light green that's found a lot in the southern part of our country, and then a little bit more the temperate region out west. And then a mixed wood is that brownish army green kind of stuff. So 66% of it is softwood, 12% of it is hardwood, and the remaining 22% is made up of mixed wood. So what are these? What are these woods? Softwood trees, well, they grow quickly by tree standards. So because of this, their wood doesn't have a chance to densify, and so it remains relatively soft and porous. So it's a lighter type of wood. Um, it's used for framing, building products like 2x4s and 4x4s, and essentially anything that goes into building a house. And it's also used for paper products and wood pulp. So as mentioned, it makes up 66% of Canada's total forest cover. And some examples of this would be some cedar, some pine, and some spruce. So hardwood trees, by comparison, take a very long time to grow. And so because of this, their wood has a chance to densify, and it gets harder and it's a little bit heavier. So this isn't always the case. Like trees like poplar or birch, they remain relatively light and porous, but maple and oak type trees are a much harder type of wood. And so because it takes a little longer for them to grow, the quality of the wood is usually a little bit better too, because of the type of wood that they are. We find that we use these things for more expensive products like flooring, like hardwood flooring, or fine furnitures, desks, tables, armoires, grandfather clocks, if you will. A push right now in the building industry is a nice big solid wood doors, very expensive, and so fine products. So 12% of the total forest cover, and so a few examples of this. Well, this is a bit of a mixed wood in here, but this would be a like a poplar, and we see some a little bit of birch in here and some maple. So our very famous maple tree. This is one of those poplar trees. So they're massive trees. They just grow straight up in the air, make a big mess. I had a lot of those in my yard as a kid, lots of raking. And then our very famous birch tree. This is a pretty picture, isn't it? It's just a mixed wood forest. You can see some deciduous type trees and some coniferous all mixed in through there. So another way that we can classify forests are based on their economic productivity, and we will refer to these as a commercial forest versus a non-commercial forest. So a commercial forest includes forests that can be harvested for a profit. We find that these exist in warmer climates where there's more water, and so because of this, the trees grow quicker, they grow larger, better quality. Um, you know, these are usually found near humans, so near some sort of settlement where we have access points like roads and railway and waterways, and so that we can ship this timber a little bit more easily. We know that timber like wood is a pretty big product, so it takes a little bit. This is just a picture of a planted forest. You can see that it's human created, very like the row like structure that happens here. So in commercial forests, because we remove all of these trees, we need to make sure that we can replant them. And so this is what a traditional forest would look like after it's been replanted. So non-commercial forests, on the other hand, includes forests that are unlikely to be harvested, usually because they're too far north and the temperatures are much lower, the precipitation is lower, the trees don't grow as quick, and they don't grow large enough, so the quality isn't there. Again, because they're so far away from people and from transportation routes, it makes it much more expensive to ship them, so it's not as economical. So a few contributions to the economy. just to show its importance. In 2011, Canada's forest exports topped $26.3 billion. We are the world leader in softwood lumber exports and newsprint and wood pulp. And most of this goes to the United States, obviously. But we see that the demand in China is on the rise. So you can see the past 4 or 5 census years, the United States has been the dominant one, and then China is starting to take a little bit more. So just to illustrate some of our products, you can see that the softwood lumber has been, a very large portion of our economy, or excuse me, of the forest economy, followed by wood pulp and newsprint. And then, even though we're making $26 billion in 2011, that's a far away from the 48 billion that we were making almost a decade ago. So, even with the recession, we know that this happens, but still remained one of our strongest industries. Another reason we should obviously care about the forests is their ability to filter our atmosphere from CO2, right? Trees breathe for us. So just one thing I want to highlight is the boreal forest. I know this is a cartoony type of a map, but it still does illustrate the point. So the boreal forest is the largest continuous forest on the planet. It spans all the way from Alaska, United States, into Canada, across Europe, and then into Russia. So the whole northern hemisphere has this. And so, followed by the temperate region forests and then our tropical forests. And we always hear a lot about the destruction of the rainforests and how damaging that can be, and the irreversible damage that comes with it. But when we take a closer look at the carbon storage based on the forest types, you can see that the boreal forest makes up such a huge number. So very important to Canada, very important to the world. So how do we remove trees? Well, anytime that we go into the natural environment and we remove something, it's called extraction. So we're just going to take a look at 3 quick types. The first one that you probably have heard of, the famous one, clear cutting. So clear cutting is the fastest and cheapest method of harvesting trees. Loggers go in, they remove everything. Lots of machinery involved, we remove everything, and we leave a very barren landscape behind. So the only way that this is successful is if we can replant it. But upon looking at this, massive areas to try to replant doesn't necessarily make it that easy. This is Google Earth, just a Landsat image I wanted to show you. This is out in BC, about central BC, like, wouldn't consider it necessarily northern BC, but in 1973, this is what we're viewing right here. In 1973, you can hardly tell where there's been forestry that has taken place. But if I remove this layer and we take a look at 1999, 10 years ago, or over 10 years ago, you can see that it's starting to make its impression on the landscape. And so I'll remove this layer and you can see that it's remained relatively the same. But at one point, this was an entire virgin forest. So this hadn't been harvested at all. And, in the span of 30 some years, you can see the damage that's been done. Like at one point, this all would have been the same forest. You can see the same forest type all the way through. And then these pockets of removed trees. This is this is clear cutting, people. This is when we go in and we remove everything. And so yes, down at this level here, it doesn't necessarily look like it's that bad. But then when we zoom out and we look at the sheer size of this, like look at it, it even goes all the way across here. You can see that quite a bit of logging, quite a bit of damage can be done from it. Something to consider. So another form of extraction is called shelterwood logging. This essentially is where we go in and we remove big strips of trees, like we clear cut big chunks out, and then hopefully we leave pieces of these other strips of seed-bearing trees where they can hopefully regenerate naturally, and we don't have to go in and manually plant as much. So the last method, the least invasive method of removing trees is selective cutting. So we can go in and we can choose only mature trees of the desired size, type, and quality, and then hopefully keeping the disruptiveness down. So this tends to be a much more costly procedure because of all the extra care that goes into it. So not a very good picture, but you can just see illustrates the point. So a few threats to forests, just quick. We'll talk about these more in detail, but air pollution, acid rain, insects and pests, also insecticides and pesticides, diseases, forest fires, which are usually naturally occurring but still are very destructive, and improper forestry methods, which ultimately leads to soil erosion. So, just it's difficult when we know that we have trees like this on our planet. Like, look how big this is. These things are magnificent, and not only are they on our own planet, but they're in our own country. We can find these out in BC. These are the giant redwoods, and so these trees take so long to grow, and to just think that we're using them for our benefits in terms of economic productivity. No, don't want this to be what is left out in BC. So something to think about.